that don't want what we know out there.
How a person can go from really almost nothing to becoming a millionaire by owning rental properties.
He would always buy these flip houses, and I just remember thinking, this guy is crazy. Why would he buy that house?
In the past decade, there's been a huge surge in the peer-to-peer short-term rental market.
Become an insider. So you have to know the rules before you get the game.
Every second counts. So make every second count.
Welcome to the Real Estate Jam. Whether you're just beginning or the best of the best, we're glad you're here. We will share successes, failures, and strategies for the action-taking real estate investor. And now to your hosts, JD and Melissa.
Hi guys, welcome to the Real Estate Jam podcast. I'm JD with my wonderful, talented, and lovely co-host, Melissa.
Hello, JD.
Hi, Melissa. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing awesome.
Good.
I'm really excited about the flip we have going on right now and overcoming some of those challenges. Mm-hmm. With that being said, I'm also excited to introduce you guys to our next guest. That's Scott Smith. He's the managing broker of You First Realty Infinity, and I'm sure he's gone through some troubles that we're going to talk about throughout the course of this podcast. Scott, thank you so much for being on the show today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, JD, Melissa. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Scott, for some of the, we talked about who our audience was before we got started recording, but for some of them that maybe don't know who you are or some of the things you've done, can you give us kind of a rundown of how you got started to where you're at today?
Yeah, so I was a sales supervisor at MCI back in the early 2000s. And when it shut down, a buddy of mine had gotten into the mortgage business, and he showed me that he made a $10,000 check on a deal. And that was kind of all anybody ever had to show me.
Mm-hmm.
And this was before Colorado had mortgage licenses. So I immediately went out and got a job as a loan officer and started with a company called AmeriQuest. Not a great place to start if you know much about AmeriQuest, kind of a unique company, and advanced my way up to owning my own small mortgage shop, and did mortgage financing, and then also helped small businesses get financing with lines of credit. In 2008, if you were around then, you know that the banks just turned off lending. One day we got a call from all of our contacts and said, hey, we know we advertise this business, but we don't do it anymore. So had to kind of shut everything down, basically lost everything I owned, handed back about $4 million worth of real estate to the banks, went through a bankruptcy, packed up my house, and had to have my parents co-sign for a rental property in my mid-30s, which, let me tell you, that's a fun conversation to have. My daughter was like 4 months old at the time, moved into a rental property, got myself back going, got into some corporate jobs, and then got into back into real estate about 6 years ago, and really took off since then. It's been I did 9 deals my first year. I've averaged 30 deals a year ever since then. And then I bought a franchise from the brokerage that I worked at, and opened this about 1.5 years ago.
That's very cool.
Yeah, that is awesome. So
JD's too young, but I was part of that 2008.
I was doing bigger and better things in 2008.
Is that high school?
Yeah.
No, it was not high
Middle school.
No, I was in the military serving our country at that time. But I definitely didn't care about buying houses. That didn't happen until 2014 for me. But okay, so now you have this franchise, and tell me what you guys are doing at the franchise. How's your business operating? And then we'll get into, because you said that you had started doing some wholesale stuff, and so I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, so I have about 15 agents that work with me. We do traditional residential. We do some commercial leasing, really just everything we can get our hands in. I know there's probably some agents out there, and one of the things about a lot of real estate brokerages is if they don't know how to do something, they'll encourage their agents to refer that business out to somebody that does. And I encourage my agents to let's learn it and do it in-house. And why refer that business to somebody else when we can accomplish it right here? We're a group of smart people. We can do hard things. And so we've really learned how to do some things that other brokerages would have referred out. and it's been to our benefit. My first, I helped a buddy buy a hay farm up down south, pretty far out in the mountains, and learned a bunch about water rights one day just to be able to get that deal to close. It was about a 4-hour drive there, 4-hour drive back. A lot of people would have referred it out, but again, I'd rather learn something and close the business and keep all the income in house.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Well, let's talk about your team and what you guys are doing to find leads, generate leads. What's your, usually when it comes to agents, there's really two schools of thought. Either you are outbound prospecting or you are working your sphere. There's not really room for in between, but I'm curious where you guys are at and what it is that you're teaching your agents.
Yeah, so we really teach buckets of business, right? So it's kind of what you said, but I don't believe it's an and or proposition. I believe it's an and proposition, right? So you should be working your sphere. You should be participating in internet leads. You should be introducing yourself to insurance agents and any referral network that you can be a part of, making sure that when you have past clients that you stay in touch with them. One of the agents over at corporate, Judy Johnson, who is one of my favorite people on the planet. She's been doing real estate for 30 years. I wish I could be Judy. The majority of her business comes from really just keeping in touch with her old clients and doing, pumpkin parties at Halloween and Christmas parties at Christmas time. And so it's nice to learn a little bit from everybody. But if you have multiple buckets of where your business are coming from, then if something's low, you're always getting business from somewhere. And I have this theory that if you're an active real estate agent and you're doing business, it is almost impossible not to find a deal a month. I know the average agent only does about 3 or 4 deals a year. We coach to the fact that you should expect to do a deal every single month, because if you're actively out in the world talking about real estate, you're going to find a deal. And 12 deals a year for most agents is a pretty good career.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we follow that same
a secret agent.
Line of thinking. Everybody's a secret agent, and you're missing out on at least a deal a month because you're being selfish and you're worried about what people are going to think when you start to do your self-promotion. And so you deny them the ability to have a really awesome agent that's going to go out and work for them and get their sale done or find them the house. And I think that's a really key nugget right there for marketing. I guess so we don't call them buckets, but it's the same kind of thing, that we have these different lines of marketing. And what we've realized is that the investment company supplements the retail side, and the retail side supplements the investment company with off-market deals or off-market sellers, or a lot of times, almost every buyer that's a client of Melissa's right now is also on our investment wholesale buyers list. Are you guys experiencing that? I know you said you'd started doing some wholesale deals and some flips and stuff like that.
So one of the things I love about wholesaling, especially if you're not an agent, maybe it doesn't pay this benefit. But one of the things I love about wholesaling is when I get a wholesale lead, it almost doesn't matter what the situation is. When I arrive in front of that client, I'm going to be able to help them. If they want to, if it's a distressed property and they're just trying to get out of it, I can wholesale the deal. If it's an amazing deal, then I can flip it myself. If I'm not able to wholesale it, and a good example is I had a deal down in Colorado Springs where it's a 1942 house, small little home. The beam that runs through the center of the house sags about 4 inches, and wholesale buyers didn't want to buy it because they felt just the cost to repair it was going to be too much. And with what she owed, they weren't going to be able to make money. So what we did was we did what's called a novation, or an equity protection program, where her and I came to a joint venture that she was going to get her number. We actually listed it on the MLS, found a retail buyer, and I made good money from her number to the retail sale. She got what she wanted, the retail buyer got what they wanted, and I got what I wanted. So, it's the old win-win-win. sometimes I show up and it's just somebody that filled out the form that wants to sell their house. And because I'm a real estate agent, it just turns into a listing appointment for me. I got a couple of listings that way. So, I mean, there's really no way to lose when you have, a bunch of different bullets in your gun to be able to satisfy what that customer wants. And like you said, when I turn it into a listing appointment, I just hand that off to one of my agents, give them some extra business that they weren't expecting, and then go on to my next appointment. So I love having more than just one way to solve a problem. I love having a variety of ways to be able to get out there and really make sure that we're doing as much business as possible and not turning anybody away.
Sure. Yeah, that's right in line with our same theory. The way that we describe it is we're spending a lot of money on this marketing. We're spending a lot of time on this marketing. It's our goal as a company, which this is an impossible task, but it's still what we're striving for, is we want to be able to monetize every lead that comes into our business, whether that's, owner finance deals, buy and holds, fix and flips, wholesaling, wholetailing. If it doesn't work, and we also use the novation, but if none of that works, then pushing it over to either Melissa or one of the agents on her team as a listing, that's allowing us to market to more people. Because even though on a regular listing with the lower percentage, we're not, that's not a slam dunk compared to some of the wholesale deals or double closes that we've done in the past. But that extra income allows us to continue marketing and being on the lookout for those home run deals. And like you said, it allows it to be a multiple win situation. It's not just a win for us; it's a win for the seller and a win for the other agents. So I think we're on the same page there. The other thing I'd say, and we get this question asked a lot, is, if I'm an investor, should I be getting my license? And I'm pose that question to you. It's a question we hear all the time at all of our meetups. Do you think it's beneficial for somebody who's an investor to go out and get their license?
So that's such a personal question, right? So for some investors, they intentionally don't get their license. They don't want to be handcuffed to whatever state rules that apply to them. I will tell you, there's some stuff coming down the pipe with wholesaling where people are acting as real estate agents and they're not licensed realtors, which means you may run into a situation in some states where you're not going to be able to wholesale if you're not a licensed realtor. Mm-hmm. I would encourage people to get their real estate license just because knowledge never hurts. And it is very, every state's a little bit different, but in Colorado, I can literally, as an investor, just write in the contract that I'm not utilizing my real estate license as part of this sale, that I'm acting as an investor. And it removes my license from the transaction, which I think is important to do. Yeah. But yeah, I would, and maybe Melissa's got a different viewpoint being an agent, but I would encourage people to get their real estate license because it doesn't hurt. It can only help. And it's going to teach you a lot of stuff that you may not know, which we have a 168-hour course here. So you learn a bunch of stuff that without you wouldn't know, and you might cross some lines without realizing it if you're not licensed.
For sure. In my opinion, the problem I think is you just need to be using it too, not just have it to have it, just because the fees involved and then the continued education and those things. So I wouldn't just get it to get it if it didn't work for us. And I think everybody's situation is different. Yeah. But that's just my take.
And in my opinion, it's kind of either you or somebody on your team has to be a licensed agent. It just doesn't make sense. You get access to the MLS. You get access to all of the resources that real estate agents have or that the MLS provides to the agents to use to help you out in your business. And when we're talking about in what you said is a lot of investors don't want to be handcuffed by in all of our transactions, there's been the only thing that we bump into maybe on a more frequent basis than anything else, and as investors, we're trying to act ethically within just because we're good people, right? We're not stealing grandma's house. But the one that we run into is if you have a bad agent on the other side of a transaction, or a bad agent representing a seller, and they're not responding, not answering phone calls, not getting information, me as an investor, not as an agent, I can skip trace the owner and go direct to him and say, hey, your agent's doing a shitty job and they're not contacting, they're not calling back, they're not doing this. And Melissa really can't. But aside from that, I don't know that I've ran into any issues being a wholesaler or being an investor that I wouldn't also be able to navigate if I had been an agent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Can you think of any?
No, I think what you said is really important, is that, and that's why I think a lot of people don't want to get their license, is because of the ability to directly reach out to the seller without involving, getting yourself in trouble with the real estate commission. I think you bring up a good point. I do a lot of this by myself. Well, I say by myself. I partner with a group out of South Carolina called New South Properties. Mm-hmm. Jake Mullins, phenomenal up there. Love that guy. He's introduced me to a lot. And then I'm part of a real estate mastermind called the $1 Billion Boardroom with Javier Hinojo. And I think it's really important that whether you're an investor, whether you're an agent, that you set up, some type of mastermind. Dale Carnegie, all those guys talk about you need to be in a mastermind of some kind. And it's just because you might, in real estate, we end up in these little maybe you end up in like an alleyway that you think this is the only way to make money. And I was that way for a long time. And as I started to meet people and know people, I realized there's so many different ways to make money in this business. And there's you're in a hallway full of doors, even though you might think you're in an alleyway, right? Like all you got to do is open those other doors and you'll find different ways that you could be accomplishing the same goal and improving yourself. And so I think making sure that you are surrounded by smarter people, and I love being the poorest, dumbest person in a room. It's like my favorite room to be in. And, my mom's like, you're always the smartest kid in the room. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And I'm glad I'm not. When I go to the $1 Billion Boardroom, everybody there is way more real estate intellectual than I am. And I learn something every time I leave there. I come back and I grow my business in some way. So regardless of what room you put yourself in, I just encourage people to get in rooms with people who are more experienced and smarter than they are. And, Javi's, I think, worth a couple of $100 million bucks, and it's great to be around that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. We agree. Melissa's pointing to her be in this room. That's from the mastermind that we're a part of, and I think even they're not always smarter than you intelligence wise, but they're on the other side of the country or from different areas. They're seeing things that work and they're testing. And I kind of like to look at it as like, in order for me to try out all of these different strategies, I'm going to have to invest time, money, effort, and energy. But when I go and hear the experience, the real world experience, I can pick and choose which things I want to try to implement. And when we go to these masterminds, I want to be able to implement just one thing that we picked up on and see if that works. One thing that's working for other people, see if that works in our business. And it's been super beneficial for us. Mm-hmm.
What you said is really smart, though, because the first couple of times I went to the mastermind meetings, I left without changing something. And then something clicked in my brain that said, you're no longer allowed to leave this meeting without implementing something. You must implement something new upon getting home. And I think that's really the change, right? It's not in the planning, it's in the execution. And you've got to absolutely move on things to be able to see a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of had the opposite problem when we first started going. Everything was so awesome, and these guys were so much smarter and so much better. I wanted to implement everything.
Right.
What we realized is, one, you shouldn't rebuild your business every 3 months when you go to these mastermind events, because that's not a way for long-term success. But just doing the one thing or two things, but not trying to change your whole business. Add these things into your existing business and continue to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I have this theory that, and it goes a little against what you just said, but it also supports it. One of the things that I've learned is, in order to change something in your life, if you try to make one small change, then if you don't execute on that small change, nothing happens. But if you make a bunch of changes all at the same time, if you drop the ball on 8 of them, Well, 2 of them stuck and 2 of them make a difference. So whenever I try to change something, I try to make more changes than I need so that I'll get some of the changes that I want. And I find that really works for me. But in the actual business itself, it's a little bit different because you can't change massive things about your business and continue. If your business is working, why would you change 10 things, right? But like if you're trying to lose weight or you're trying to change a mindset, I say change your whole schedule, and then enough of the changes will stick where, you're going to be all right.
Sure, I like that too. Well, Scott, if our listeners wanted to find out more about you, see what you're doing, I know that you're out there doing a lot of good things, and I want our audience to go and see you, follow you, see what you guys got going on. Where should we send them?
Yeah, so you can shoot me an email at scott@youfirst.com, and that's YOU, the numeric 1, S like Sam, T like Tom.com. I would recommend giving me a call. I know a lot of people don't like to give out their cell phone number, but my cell phone rings 24/7. So it's 720-252-7037. Anybody that's interested in doing business in Colorado in real estate, definitely give me a call. I'd love to help in any way that I can.
Awesome, Scott. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today. And we look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you for having me both. I appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Jam. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information, check out our website, therealestatejam.com, or find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Real Estate Jam. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us an email at therealestatejam@gmail.com. See you next episode.